43 cycles in politics taught me a single lesson: weak species never lasted in the chamber. Then a human arrived and, with one finger, demonstrated that we were the fragile ones. I have served the Galactic Council for 43 cycles, and I believed I had witnessed every possible situation. Every inflated speech, every border argument, every trade discussion that collapsed into shouting over tariff percentages on crystallized methane. My name is Vex, and my role is what is officially called a legislative observer. In simpler terms, I stand off to the side with a data pad and record every ill-considered statement these so-called leaders make for the official archives. The council chamber itself is, frankly, excessive. It is a vast circular hall suspended at the center of Station Unity, which orbits a fairly ordinary yellow star in the terminus sector. The designers intended it to feel inspiring and fair, with seating arranged in layered rings so each species could see all others. In practice, it creates ideal acoustics for insults, allowing them to echo around the room several times before disappearing. Above us is a transparent dome that reveals the stars beyond. It sounds appealing until one notices it functions as a massive window that keeps the entire chamber uncomfortably cold. The CRYTH representatives appreciate this feature. Most others endure it while complaining quietly. On this specific day, the day events shifted, the chamber was full, completely crowded with delegates from across the known galaxy. The air recyclers were running at full capacity, managing the atmospheric needs of 63 different species, all breathing, sweating, and, in the case of the Gloria delegation, secreting defensive mucus out of nervousness. At the center of the chamber sat High Chancellor Morax, a Valoran with silver scales that reflected the lights. He had a habit of tilting his head in a way that appeared thoughtful, though he was really calculating how to phrase his words to sound more important. His three eyes blinked independently, an effect I always found unsettling. To his right was Councillor Threen, representing the Aquatic Coalition. She floated in a mobile tank of luminescent fluid, her tentacles occasionally pressing against the transparent walls when agitated. Her diplomatic reputation largely meant she aligned with whoever spoke last. The Kasari delegation occupied an entire section, as expected. These large bird-like creatures had 4 wings and a distinct sense of superiority. Their lead counselor, a silver-feathered individual named Krivak, repeatedly adjusted his ceremonial sash, seemingly more concerned with appearance than politics. Further back, Ambassador Zoltrix represented the mechanized Concordat, a species so integrated with technology that calling them organic was generous. His glowing red optical sensors and metallic, reverberating voice made every statement feel slightly threatening. The room's tension that day was palpable, almost tangible, as the council prepared for a vote that had everyone on edge. Humanity had officially applied for Tier 2 Council status. For anyone unfamiliar with galactic bureaucracy, consider yourselves fortunate. Tier 2 status grants a species actual voting rights on non-emergency matters. It also brings trade benefits, mutual defense considerations, and, most concerning for current council members, shared power. Humans had only been Tier 3 members for 12 cycles. 12. Most species wait at least 50 cycles before even applying for Tier 2. Yet here they were, humanity. Bipedal mammals from a remote planet called Earth, boldly requesting a promotion. The chamber buzzed with murmurs, like a swarm of politically connected, annoyed insects. From my corner, I caught fragments of conversation. The Gloria whispered about excessive ambition, the Kasari dismissed humans as primitive, and even the normally neutral Sinandari shook their crystalline heads in disapproval. High Chancellor Morax raised a clawed hand, and the chamber quieted, mostly. Someone in the Aquatic Coalition still bubbled, but 3 others tapped the tank to silence them. We convene today, Morax began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of years in politics, to address the application of species designation human, catalog reference Sol 3, for elevation to Tier 2 Council status. He paused, unnecessarily dramatic, but entirely in character, before adding, "Let the debate commence." And commence it did. The discussion was so intense I filled 3 data pads with recordings. Yet none of us, no one in that chamber, was ready for what was about to happen, for what she would accomplish with just a single finger. Councillor Krivak spoke first, naturally. He ruffled his silver feathers and stood to his full height, an impressive display if one appreciated such things. Personally, I found it a bit compensatory, but no one asked me. Chancellor, esteemed colleagues, he began, each word punctuated by the click of his beat. I must express my profound concern, no, my sheer bewilderment, regarding the application before us today. He gestured with one wing toward the empty human delegation seat, which remained vacant. The humans had not arrived, and Krivak seemed to take pleasure in their absence. Humanity requests Tier 2 status after just 12 cycles. 12. My species spent 70 cycles proving our worth, demonstrating stability, technological achievement, and cultural sophistication. He adjusted his feathers again, apparently an essential part of making a point. What have humans contributed? They enter our galaxy with primitive fusion drives, barely functional translation devices, and a social system resembling a feudal collective. Several council members chirped, clicked, or hummed in agreement. Ambassador Zoltrix's optical sensors brightened, signaling his approval. Krivak continued, gaining momentum. Their planet is a Class 12 Deathworld. Humans evolved surviving predators, pathogens, and frequent conflicts over frozen water and decomposing matter. This is not the foundation of a civilized species, it is barely controlled chaos. Councillor Threen's tentacles rippled in agreement. I concur with my colleague. Our psychological assessments indicate humans are emotionally unstable, prone to violence, and lack the rational detachment needed for governance. Last cycle, reports indicated humans forming attachments to small domesticated predators they keep in their living spaces. They call them cats and even create digital imagery for entertainment. This is not behavior befitting a serious species. Polite laughter filled the chamber, a restrained, sophisticated laughter that conveyed disdain more than amusement. High Chancellor Morax did not intervene, his 3 eyes blinked in sequence, and I could swear I detected subtle amusement in each. Then the chamber doors opened, and the laughter vanished. Commander Maya Torres entered with the presence of someone who clearly owned the station, or, in some cosmic sense, maybe she did. Her military background was evident in the purposeful, efficient way she moved, each step precise. She wore a simple dark blue uniform with minimal decoration, a small patch of Earth's continents and a shoulder rank insignia. What struck me most was her expression, utterly unimpressed. Her dark eyes scanned the chamber with the calm assessment of a predator entering new territory. Her black hair was tied back practically, and her brown skin absorbed the chamber's light rather than reflecting it. She was of average height for a human but carried herself with the presence of someone far larger, almost as if she were made of steel. She moved deliberately, unhurried, and without offering excuses for being late. She walked to the human delegation seat, placed a slim data tablet before her, and sat upright with hands folded neatly on the table. Silence filled the chamber. Creek's beak remained slightly open, his prepared speech clearly disrupted by her arrival. Commander Torres smiled, not a friendly smile, but one of mild amusement at having heard all the words spoken in her absence. Please, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the chamber, continue. You were explaining why my species is considered too primitive for Tier 2 status. Something about cats, was it? Her tone was polite, formally courteous, which somehow made the statement sharper. Councillor Threen's tentacles curled defensively in response. High Chancellor Morax cleared his throat, a sound like grinding rocks in Thorian physiology. Commander Torres, welcome. We were merely engaged in the standard deliberative process regarding your species application. Standard, she repeated, her smile steady. I imagine mocking applicants in their absence is standard here. Creech ruffled his feathers defensively. We were not mocking. We were evaluating. Based on observable facts and documented behavior, your species has a concerning record of internal conflict, irrational decisions, and emotional volatility. I see, Torres replied, leaning back in her chair with complete ease, as if she were in her own home rather than facing a council that had just spent 20 minutes listing humanity's faults. Councillor Creek, how many wars has your species fought in the past century? His beak clicked. That is irrelevant to the current discussion. Humor me, she said. 7, he admitted, feathers flattening slightly. But these were territorial disputes and trade disagreements, rational conflicts with clear objectives and negotiated resolutions. Right. Rational wars. Got it, she said, nodding as if taking notes. And how many has humanity fought in the same period? It was clearly a trap, though even Krivak could sense it. According to our intelligence, approximately 42 conflicts of varying scale. 47, actually, Commander Torres corrected. But who's counting? And do you know how many of those we wanted? The chamber fell silent. All of them, she said softly. Every single one. Even the ones where we fought ourselves, which is admittedly confusing but statistically accurate. Ambassador Zoltrix's sensors blinked rapidly. This proves our point exactly. Humanity is a violent, war-driven species, unsuitable for civilized governance. Then it happened. Commander Torres raised her hand deliberately, extending a single finger, specifically the middle one. She held it for 3 seconds, expression unchanged, before lowering it calmly. No one in the chamber knew how to respond. Councillor Threen's tentacles pressed against her tank in confusion. Is that a human greeting? A numerical sign? A symbol, suggested one Gloric delegate, its mucus secretion rising nervously. A measurement system, perhaps. One finger, one unit. KAC tilted his head from multiple angles, trying to understand. Commander Torres, could you explain the significance of that gesture? We wish to understand your cultural expression. Her expression was unforgettable, pure satisfaction laced with subtle amusement. Oh, you want an explanation? She asked, her voice innocent yet deliberate. Of course. Cultural differences and all. That gesture, esteemed council members, is what we call flipping the bird. It is a traditional human expression that roughly translates to, I have considered your opinion and have determined it holds approximately the same value as the waste products my species excretes after consuming nutrients. The chamber reacted, not with laughter this time, but with outrage, confusion, and a kind of horrified curiosity. This is unacceptable, Krivak squawked. You insult this council with primitive gestures. Oh no, Commander Torres said, raising both hands in a gesture of mock surrender. I would never insult this council. That would be unprofessional. I was merely demonstrating a cultural practice, as you requested. She added calmly, if you feel insulted, that is your interpretation. Chancellor Morix's scales darkened, showing anger. Torres continued firmly, this council deserves respect. You govern 78 civilized species across 42 sectors. Respect. Her voice hardened. You want respect? You spent the last 20 minutes calling my species primitive, violent, unstable, and unfit for leadership. You mocked our history, our culture, even our pets. And now you demand respect? She leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. Every eye, sensor, and organ in the chamber focused on her. Here is what you actually respect, Chancellor: power, resources. Anything that makes you appear more important or secure. Once a species emerges that might challenge your established hierarchy, you quickly form strong opinions about who belongs at the table. Ambassador Zoltrix's voice modulator crackled. You are confirming our assessment, emotional, aggressive, and unsuitable. Commander Torres smiled, genuinely this time. Ambassador Zoltrix, I haven't even begun to be aggressive. At the moment, I am being polite. Believe me, you do not want to see the alternative. She returned to her seat, folded her hands, and waited. The council members exchanged glances, chirps, and bioluminescent signals. They were unsettled. This was not the usual progression for Tier 2 applications. Perhaps we should move to the formal evaluation portion of this session, High Chancellor Mordak suggested slowly. Please, go ahead with the evaluation, Commander Torres replied. High Chancellor Morax gestured to the central projection system, clearly anticipating a standard diplomatic presentation, technical data, trade proposals, cultural accomplishments, all neatly summarized with charts and graphs, the usual bureaucratic display. She tapped her data tablet twice, and the chamber's holographic system changed entirely. Let me start, Commander Torres said, her voice clear as she addressed Councillor Creech's concerns about human technology and social organization. The hologram shifted to show a three-dimensional model of a human warship, not a sleek diplomatic ship, but a military dreadnought the humans had named Everest, after one of their largest mountains. This vessel had been constructed in orbit around the Moon 8 cycles ago. It featured fully integrated pulsewave weapons, adaptive shielding that adjusted to incoming fire, and a jump drive capable of crossing 16 sectors in the time it takes humans to file a standard flight plan. Kriok's feathers rippled. Impressive engineering, certainly, but hardly. I am not finished, she interrupted smoothly. This ship was designed, built, and deployed during what we call peacetime. When humans are not actively engaged in conflict, this is what we produce. Would you like to see what we made during our last major war? The hologram shifted again, now showing a weapon platform compact yet highly efficient. The specifications indicated it could reduce a small moon to its constituent atoms in roughly 4 minutes. This one is called Peacemaker, Commander Torres said, with a note of dry humor. We built 600 of them in 18 months, while negotiating 3 separate peace treaties. Multitasking is a necessary skill when you evolve on a Deathworld. Councillor Threen's tentacles froze in her tank. Commander, are you threatening this council? Torres looked genuinely puzzled. No, Counselor, I am educating. You claimed we lack technological sophistication. I am simply setting the record straight. Now, let us address the allegation regarding emotional instability and irrational behavior. The hologram shifted, displaying what appeared to be historical records, dates, events, and diplomatic negotiations spanning human history. My species has conducted successful diplomacy with over 200 distinct cultural groups on our planet alone, often while those groups were actively at war with each other. We have peace treaties that have lasted centuries. We maintain international organizations coordinating efforts from disease prevention to space exploration. And yes, we have engaged in wars, because sometimes violence is the only rational response to certain situations. She paused briefly, allowing the statement to settle. Counselor Creek mentioned your species fought 7 wars in the last century, all resolved through negotiation. Impressive. Would you like to hear how humanity addressed our last major planetary conflict? Creve remained silent, though his beak clicked nervously. Torres continued, we developed a weapon so catastrophically powerful that its use would ensure mutual destruction for all involved. Yet instead of deploying it, we looked at one another and collectively decided that maybe, just maybe, we should attempt dialogue instead. We call this concept mutually assured destruction. And it prevented an entire planet from annihilating itself for 6 decades. That is not emotional instability, Counselor. That is rational fear applied correctly. Ambassador Zoltrix's voice modulator crackled. You are describing a species that essentially holds itself hostage to avoid self-annihilation. Hardly an endorsement for effective governance, is it? Commander Torres leaned forward. Tell me, Ambassador, what did the mechanized Concordat do when the Silicate Rebellion threatened your core worlds 20 cycles ago? The chamber fell silent. Torres checked her historical files quickly, sensing the answer would be uncomfortable. We negotiated a settlement, Zoltrich said, defensive. You surrendered 3 entire systems and paid tribute for 12 cycles, Torres corrected sharply, her tone cutting and precise. Because your species, despite all your technological enhancements, could not tolerate the casualties needed to suppress a rebellion through military force. Humanity, on the other hand, endured a civil war that cost 600 million lives rather than allow our planet to be divided. We prioritize unity over individual survival. You might see that as irrational. We call it commitment. She tapped her tablet again. The hologram now displayed a rotating image of Earth, blue, green, and white, spinning quietly in the projection. You described our planet as a Class 12 Deathworld, as if it were an insult. Let me explain what a Class 12 Deathworld really is. Esteemed Council members, our gravity exceeds that of 70% of inhabited worlds in this galaxy. Half the species in this room would find our atmospheric oxygen toxic. Our weather can devastate cities. Tectonic activity reshapes continents. Predators evolved specifically to hunt humans. Microorganisms have claimed more lives than all our wars combined. Her voice rose slightly, a hint of passion breaking through her professional tone. Yet we thrived. We didn't merely survive, we dominated. We reached the top of the food chain on a planet actively working against us. Then we looked to the stars and asked, what else is out there? This is not chaos, Counselor 3. This is adaptation. This is resilience. This is exactly what you want in a Tier 2 species. When the next crisis comes, and it always does, you want someone at the table who knows how to take a hit and keep moving forward. I found myself nodding, catching myself before I did. Objectivity, neutrality, I was supposed to record without bias, but her arguments were hard to dismiss. The Glor delegation was secreting so much mucus their seats were becoming slick. The Sundari vibrated at frequencies I had never observed before. Even High Chancellor Morax appeared unsettled, his scales shifting through colors I didn't have names for. Commander Torres displayed one final hologram, a clean, undeniable chart. Let us now discuss contributions. In 12 cycles, humanity has shared 37 major technological innovations with the galactic community. We have participated in 14 joint scientific expeditions. We have provided humanitarian aid to 6 worlds experiencing natural disasters. And we have requested nothing in return except fair trade and the chance to prove ourselves. She slowly scanned the chamber, meeting as many eyes and optical sensors as possible. So, tell me again, how are we too primitive for Tier 2 status? The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, when the air pressure drops and every creature with survival instinct senses something significant is about to happen. High Chancellor Morax was the first to recover. Politicians are nothing if not resilient when their authority is challenged. His scales returned to a neutral silver, and he composed himself into what probably passed as diplomatic calm among the Valorans. Commander Torres, your presentation is thorough, the High Chancellor began, choosing each word carefully. However, this council must weigh not only technological capabilities and military strength but also cultural compatibility and long-term stability within the galactic framework. Cultural compatibility, Commander Torres repeated, her tone indicating she anticipated the next point. Please elaborate. Before Morax could respond, Ambassador Wren of the Talor Confederacy activated his speech indicator. The Talamor were insectoid, with iridescent chitin, and seldom spoke in council sessions unless they had something significant to contribute. Chancellor, if I may, Ren's voice transmitted through his translator. I believe we may be approaching this evaluation incorrectly. All heads, sensors, and appendages in the chamber turned toward him. The Talamor Confederacy has maintained direct trade relations with humanity for 8 cycles. In that time, humans have been prompt, fair, and highly adaptable to our communication methods. When our colony on Talamor 6 faced a crystalline plague, human medical teams arrived within 2 days, collaborating with our physicians until a treatment was developed. They requested no payment, no territory, no concessions, they simply assisted. Ren paused, his antenna twitching for emphasis. It is difficult to reconcile such actions with claims of emotional instability or unsuitability for governance. Councillor Creek's feathers flattened in response. Ambassador Ren, another voice interjected, your experiences do not override the broader security and stability concerns that were created to justify maintaining your influence. This was Councillor Merrick of the Outer Rim Coalition, a mammalian species with silver fur and sharp teeth, their expression resembling a smile. Let us be honest about the underlying issue, Merrick continued. The Kasari hold major military contracts with 40% of Tier 2 species. If humanity reaches Tier 2 status, their advanced weapons technology would enter competitive bidding. That is the real concern, Krivak, not human emotional stability. The chamber erupted with voices, clicks, buzzes, and modulated sounds. I worked frantically to record everything, my datapad overloading. Kriox rose to full height, spreading his wings. How dare you suggest I act out of self-interest? Please, Merrick interrupted. We all act in self-interest, but at least I am honest about it. The Outer Rim Coalition votes in favor of humanity's application. High Chancellor Morax raised his clawed hand to restore order. It took several attempts before the chamber quieted. His 3 eyes blinked rapidly, a clear sign of stress. This is highly irregular, he said. The formal vote isn't scheduled until you've had time to persuade enough council members to secure the outcome you want. Commander Torres responded calmly, yes, I understand how parliamentary procedure works. Chancellor Ambassador Zoltrix's sensors glowed bright red. The commander is speaking out of turn. This is a deliberative body with established protocols that apparently include insulting applicants before they arrive and then acting surprised when they object. Torres replied sharply, forgive me if I am not impressed by your protocols. Councillor Threen's tentacles twitched anxiously in her tank. Perhaps we should table this discussion and reconvene after a cooling-off period. Emotions are running high. Torres countered, only human emotions, right, Counselor? When Krivak performs his territorial display with the feather spreading and posturing, that is considered rational debate. When I point out factual inconsistencies in your arguments, that is emotion. Interesting double standard. Additional voices joined the debate. The chamber was fracturing visibly. Previously neutral species activated their speech indicators, demanding to speak. Within the Aquatic Coalition, 3 delegates openly contradicted Threen. Even some mechanized Concordat representatives argued with Ambassador Zoltrix, their optical sensors flashing in disagreement. High Chancellor Morax appeared visibly stressed. His carefully crafted consensus was unraveling in full view. Order, he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. We will have order, or I will clear this chamber and postpone the vote indefinitely. Torres simply smiled and remained silent. The disorder was accomplishing her goals. It took nearly 15 minutes for High Chancellor Morax to restore enough control to allow the vote to proceed, 15 minutes of arguing, posturing, and what could only be described as political panic across multiple species. Suddenly, it became clear that their long-established power structure was being challenged by a species that had evolved to navigate and survive despite apex predators. We will now proceed to a formal vote, announced Morax, his voice tight. All in favor of granting humanity Tier 2 Council status, activate your approval indicators. The voting board illuminated like a star map. Green indicators began to appear across the display, far more than anticipated. The Talamor Confederacy voted yes immediately, followed by the Outer Rim Coalition. Then the Sinandari, their crystalline structures pulsing as if signaling approval. Smaller delegations, species that had remained silent during the debate, started casting their votes one by one. I observed Councillor Cre's expression as the tally increased. His feathers were completely flattened, the clear sign in his species of conceding defeat. The Aquatic Coalition was split, 3 voted no, but 2 subordinate delegates broke ranks to vote yes. Ambassador Zoltrix voted no, yet even some of the mechanized, conquered datacates defected to support humanity. When the final count appeared, my central processor nearly glitched, 41 in favor, 22 opposed. Humanity had won, decisively, not by a narrow margin. High Chancellor Morax stared at the board as if it had personally betrayed him. The vote is recorded, he stated. By Council mandate, humanity is hereby granted Tier 2 status, effective immediately, with all associated rights, responsibilities, and privileges. His tone carried the weight of personal defeat. Commander Torres rose slowly, gathering her data tablet with precise movements. She surveyed the chamber and, I am certain, made eye contact with every delegate who had opposed her. Thank you, High Chancellor, esteemed council members, she said, her voice fully professional. All traces of sarcasm were removed. Humanity looks forward to contributing to the continued prosperity and security of the Galactic Council. We pledge to bring the same dedication, innovation, and unpredictability that brought us here today. That final remark, a subtle jab delivered without change in expression, was flawless. Cray could not restrain a reaction. Commander Torres, I trust you understand that Tier 2 status carries substantial responsibilities. You will be expected to meet the same standards as all council members. Yes, Counselor, Torres replied, her smile returning, sharp and calculated. We are prepared for it. She moved toward the chamber doors, then paused and glanced back over her shoulder. One more thing, that weapon platform I mentioned earlier, the Peacemaker, we actually produced 800 units, not 600. We simply didn't feel it necessary to disclose all of them in a diplomatic setting. It might have seemed threatening. The doors closed before anyone could respond. I remained in my corner, data pad in hand, and experienced a sudden moment of clarity. We had severely underestimated them. We saw their short presence in the galaxy and assumed inexperience. We saw their violent past and assumed instability. We saw their emotional bonds and assumed weakness. We were wrong in every case. Humans were not unstable, they were unpredictable, which in galactic politics could be far more dangerous. They were not primitive, they were efficient, achieving in 12 cycles what other species required 50 to accomplish. They were not weak, they were restrained, which is an entirely different quality and potentially far more intimidating. Around me, the council chamber had erupted into debates over trade agreements, military alliances, and territorial claims. In less than an hour, the political landscape had shifted completely. And somewhere on that blue-and-green world they called home, humanity was likely either celebrating or already preparing for the next challenge. That is what humans do, they keep advancing, regardless of whether anyone else is ready. High Chancellor Mordak sank into his seat, all three eyes closed. We are going to regret this, he murmured. I recorded a note on my data pad, he was probably correct. So, after 43 cycles of legislative observation, culminating in what may be the most consequential council session in galactic history, what have I learned? Let me offer some advice without charge, because it seems no one else is willing to state it clearly. First lesson, never, and this cannot be overstated, insult a species without first confirming how many weapons they currently have aimed at your home world. Humanity, it turns out, had been courteous up to that moment. Courtesy, however, should never be mistaken for vulnerability. In reality, it signals restraint, and restraint exists only when alternatives are available, options you likely do not want to examine too closely. Second lesson, Deathworld species earn that designation for a reason. They did not survive by being pleasant or accommodating. They endured by adapting, persisting, and, when necessary, becoming highly dangerous. Humans smile while showing their teeth. Consider that carefully. They display their primary weapons as a form of greeting. Only a species extremely confident in its position behaves so casually around threat signals. The galactic political balance shifted almost immediately after that vote. Within 3 cycles, humanity had secured defense agreements with 12 species, including several that had opposed them. Humans, it appears, do not maintain grudges when financial advantage is involved, which is both efficient and deeply unsettling. Trade routes realigned. Technology sharing increased rapidly. Before long, species that had spent decades advancing through diplomatic channels found themselves overtaken by newcomers who moved far faster. After 12 cycles, Councillor Krivak stepped down 4 cycles later. Official reports cited health concerns. Unofficially, his military contracts collapsed once most governments began purchasing human weapons systems instead. Market forces can be unforgiving. Chancellor Morax remains in office, though he appears older now, fatigued. Last month, he approved 3 additional human initiatives without resistance. I believe he reached the same conclusion I did. As for myself, my outlook has changed significantly. I once believed my role was monotonous, documenting the predictable decisions of established powers repeating familiar strategies. Now I recognize that I am observing something unprecedented. Humanity is not merely entering the galactic community. They are restructuring it, regardless of external approval. This is my caution to any species considering future opposition to humanity. The single finger raised by Commander Torres was indeed a signal, but not the one we initially assumed. It was not only an insult. It was a commitment. One finger was shown, but 9 remain. And we have no understanding of what those gestures may signify. So consider this guidance, drawn from direct observation through my own sensors. When a human smiles and asks whether you would like to see what they can do, the correct response is always no. If they are asking, they already understand the outcome. The answer would be disturbing, and their inquiry is simply an act of courtesy. As stated earlier, human courtesy is not weakness.